Gorsuch is the one who was, like Justice Roberts, really focused on the question of, even if Congress, let's say for the sake of argument, wants to delegate those powers to the president, is that a line we should draw for them? And should we police their constitutional authority for them? Because if you're going to decide that they have delegated that authority in this statute, despite the lack of plain language, can they ever get that authority back? He was sort of asking John Sauer, wouldn't they have to have a veto-proof majority, essentially, to redo an interpretation of this law? If we decide that the president can tariff under this law and Congress decides that's not what we intended at all, don't they have to survive through a veto-proof majority to get that changed? And John Sauer, really struggled with that as well.
Yeah, I'm curious. The portions of the hearing I talked about, the portions I didn't hear as much about were lines of questions about the administration's really specious use of the word emergency, of the term emergency. Like, this is a president who is claiming that when he gets pissed off while he's watching the World Series because there's a commercial about Ronald Reagan, that constitutes an emergency, and the next day he can jack up tariffs on Canada. This is a president who can get angry because his political ally who tried to overthrow an election in Brazil is actually being tried. And so he gets angry at judges down there and then jacks up tariffs to 50%. That's his emergency. It has nothing to do with anything that's in this statute. I'm curious, did they press the Solicitor General on that point?
Not so hard. Justice Kagan mentioned it at one point. And I think the reason they didn't mention it, despite its appeal to just common sense, right, is that there's an easier way out of this. Justice Barrett is sort of known on the court right now for being the person who seeks a solution that as many people as possible can glom onto and that solves a problem before the court and is few steps as possible with as few repercussions as possible, really deciding the issue squarely before her and nothing more. And right now, I think the easiest way to resolve this dispute is on that plain language of what does it mean to regulate importation. If the authority that the president is seeking is nowhere in the statute to begin with, Joe, then you don't even have to have that conversation about whether or not there is an emergency, much less a conversation about how much deference is the president owed when he alone has authority under a statute to decide whether there's that emergency.
So, Steve, justices expressed some skepticism, but we don't know how they'll rule, not yet. But let's say, for the sake of argument, they do say the president does not have the authority